Hi, my name is Mika Satomi. I'm an artist based in Berlin. I work with electronics textiles. I would like to take you through my work, artificial intelligence and its false lies. I started off the project with a general interest in AI. The last years I was hearing about AI and automation will replace our jobs. I found a paper estimating 47% of jobs will be replaced by AI in a decade or two. Jobs are not only tasks to earn money, but many of us identify with the jobs we perform. I thought rather than staying away from this technology, I place myself in proximate and borrow my body to this bodiless intelligence. I had a chance to collaborate with scientists from Confirm Research Center through the STARS residency program. They develop smart manufacturing systems. I made a series of interviews with them to learn what the people behind the makings of AI are thinking. After talking with them, it was clear to me that I would like to make an AI myself rather than asking them to make one for me. Following a number of online tutorials and consulting the scientists, I managed to make my first artificial neural network, a type of AI. Then I translated it to a network of microcontrollers, each microcontroller acting as one neuron. Each neuron calculates the same algorithm and communicates through optic fiber so we can see the inner workings of the network. I used silver thread to embroider the circuit on the fabric for it to stay soft and flexible so I can wear it.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Oh, it's like the night sky. That's what it is. Isn't it?
Now you see more.
Wow. Oh my goodness, it really has the textures of a sky in a sense. You can see these little planets in the distance and then something's up close.
I never thought about it, but yeah, it does look like.
I mean, the handwork is so visible. Even from a distance, you feel like this is an organic, something, a labor. What you've been exploring for the last, 7 months? This is...
Yeah, that's true, yeah. It's a time and the work, yeah.
So regular, the way that you reproduce these lines in exactly the same form.
Yeah, and actually these stitches, I try to mimic or get inspired by sashiko embroidery. It's a Japanese workwear embroidery.
Yeah, this looks so familiar to me, like that I've seen similar kinds of garments, but it also reminds me a lot of what I've seen in Japan. I mean, the color too, just this white, almost, because it's silver and the dark blue, it comes off in the light as having this like white color to it, especially with the reflection of these. It's funny too because so much of this type of work, I feel that it gets taken over by the aesthetic of the microcontroller or the little components. That I don't know how you did it, honestly, to make these look so organic in their form. I mean, to what extent did you have kind of an aesthetic premonition as to what this would look like? An idea of like what you wanted to design visually?
In the beginning, I knew it's a garment, but I didn't know what shape. And I often had a reference to work clothes, so at first looking at really like work clothes. And that's one of the reasons why also I chose blue. The human clothes like thing, it always looked like fashion. Like it goes into immediately to the fashion or like spacesuit. So I wanted to break it, and then I was just drawing like ghost because I thought it's like a ghost. And then okay, maybe I just take this ghost.
Yeah. The term artificial intelligence came about, I suppose the ambition was to automate human perception and reasoning capabilities in an automated fashion. And I suppose we still try to do that, but we don't try to do it in a way that's holistic. We don't try to create an artificial brain, for example. We don't try to build something that's conscious.
So I'd have said AI is trying to build systems that react sensibly and appropriately to their environment.
We can say that AI is the power of a machine to mimic some kind of human behavior.
I don't think we have an agreed definition of what intelligence is. So I think calling it artificial intelligence just makes things even more confusing, because we don't even really agree on what we mean by natural intelligence.
Intelligence is really hard to define. Like, intelligence could be your score at an IQ test, but it could be social intelligence as well.
How do you explain what is AI?
So it's an umbrella term covering many types of algorithms. It was initially developed to simulate like the way it was inspired by human mind. It was inspired by the way we sense, perceive our environment, and then based on our senses and perceptions, take decisions and act.
Could we define something as an intelligence, and then at what point we call something intelligent?
That's a very interesting discussion. Like we had also like this discussion in our group at the beginning, like exactly this, like what is intelligence, when you consider that an algorithm is intelligent or not, like where is this threshold when it happens. I think this kind of capability to learn, it's core also like at this definition of intelligence. But yeah, I also agree with you. I think the definition that we have nowadays is very narrow, and it's kind of purely cognitively based.
The name itself would let you imagine a lot of things, and maybe things that is not is also included in one way.
Yeah, I wonder, is this excitement misplaced necessarily? I think it might be also good.
We should be excited, do you think?
I think we should not be necessarily like pessimistic and like,
okay, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you need a bit of excitement to explore, like, or at least curiosity, like I would say, to spark that curiosity. Like, in my opinion, that's very important, and I think these kind of narratives that are created about artificial intelligence should be explored also more outside academia.
If an AI or intelligence had a body, what difference does it make to it?
In a way, we could say that algorithms do have body already, like all of them, because they are not just floating in the clouds, but they are using hardware, physical hardware, and if we think about bodies more in terms of the same shape or like possibilities that human bodies or animal bodies will have. Like, it's also about perception, about senses, and about mobility. Like, how is this artificial agent able to sense the environment and to act upon the environment? And what do we understand by the environment? Because, like, as I said, like, if we share this environment with the robots, probably like we would like to have robots which are more similar to us.
At the end, it's a calculation machine, and then I don't know if the sort of consciousness or intelligence that we project or we experience as a human being would be just like that, produced from sum of calculation, even though it was in a very complex network.
So that's not an easy question to answer. We don't know how actually mind works. We don't have those answers at the moment. All we have, like, in terms of technologies and with algorithms, like at the moment, is just attempts to simulate through some very abstract models and very approximate models some aspects of how human intelligence works. But it's very, like, it's a very narrow, and like we have to be aware that this is not anywhere close. Like we have a lot of things to understand.
Here is how artificial neural networks function. The network consists of many, sometimes thousands of artificial neurons. Each neuron has several inputs and one output. The output of one neuron connects to other neurons as input. This forms the network of neurons. The first neurons of the network are provided with data, like the pixels of a cat image or a hand gesture as input. The input is multiplied by its weight and summed up to form the neuron's output value. This output value is sent to other neurons as input, multiplied by their weights, summed up, and forms the output values of the next neurons. This process repeats until the network reaches its end. The last neurons provide the result. Let's say the input to your network is your finger movement, then the network detects your hand gestures. But how does the network know a gesture? Every neural network starts with random values and has to be trained. To train, you provide a set of examples. Here, I train it with one gesture, give the corresponding answer to the last neuron by pressing a button. The last neuron calculates the error, adjusts its weights, and passes the error back to all the connected neurons. These neurons then adjust their weights and pass the error further. This error correction is repeated thousands of times until the network starts to give correct results. This is called machine learning. I trained this network 8,000 times so it can recognize 3 hand gestures: rock, paper, and scissors.
There's going to be no universal agreement as to what the ethical behaviour is, but at the very least I think the system designers should know what the constraints are on the system. So we should be able to say, my system will do this, or my system will not go down that line, my system will not take that sort of action.
As long as they can know what are the implications of AI, where is the data coming from, can it be biased, can it lie to you, can it be doing bad things, or will it only do great things? If the people have access to that information, then basically them choosing to use it or not is kind of like deciding what the future will look like, right?
I'm hoping that people will become more emancipated in their use of technology and become more of actually use technology the way it suits them and the way it benefits them, and the kind of people have more stronger, bigger ability to kind of build their own tools, the tools that they need, rather than just buying off the shelf and just taking what is given.
You have this layer of literally the garment, which is alive in its own right, but then your being underneath it that's moving the garment, and the idea of, well, who's moving who, and how, what is your relationship to this thing that you're wearing, when really you're responding to each other in this kind of symbiotic sense, It's like literally it couldn't survive without your movement, because that's what it's being driven by, but then you're also encased by it, so it's not like you have a presence without this object. So
symbiosis is a very good way to say it, I think.
That's so interesting, and it challenges then the idea of intelligence as located in a particular being, as if it's one kind of singular entity that owns that intelligence belongs to, but rather that intelligence is a process that's like produced in the relationship between these kinds of entities, It has again, with the trope of technology, like intelligence has a kind of like harshness to it. You are intelligent, or intelligence is actually used for like kind of violence almost, right? Where it's like technology that is intelligent is deeply intimidating because of what its capacity for harm and destruction and all these things. And softening it most literally and, you know, figuratively in this mode of like distributing and weaving, interweaving.
Working with technology or technology and art, I often get this question, what it is for? And I don't know how to answer this. And I feel like sometimes it's asked too much, like I'm expected to have a function at the end. And like this work doesn't really have that sort of function in that sense.
It's so interesting because so much of media art does not resonate with me. I think in part because it still is in conversation with this functional dynamic, you know, that it's still trying to turn on its head, invert kind of a trope around technology.
It's using this really difficult medium because socially we're always connoted and bound to this technology, the function, it's a tool.
E-textiles can often work as a gimmick, and how so much of what over time like a gimmick is about is like reproducing something just for the sake of shock or for the sake of like this being something novel or, you know, disruption of some kind.
No, it's also a medium for me, and then you can see it as a medium. Then I mean the medium can be considered as a gimmick, like, you know, if you want to make an object and if you use a bronze, it's like maybe it's a gimmick, but then that gimmick or the material and method is almost like leading you to do a certain way that you do things. No, you can't do the same with the others, or almost if you're forced to do the same with the other material and a gimmick, you will end in somewhere. So that kind of materials and the technique that you choose as your medium and in your tool is leading you to do certain things.
Yeah, it makes me think the gimmick is about this sort of superficiality of an enterprise, you know, of something, a project you take up where you're not necessarily really committing to the things you're setting out. Like in this case, the amount of thinking that went into just producing even the first prototype was such that I couldn't even think about superficiality. What does it mean to do that superficially? Because you don't know where you're going. What is the it in the first place, you know?
We don't view it as having nobody there, so we view it as helping the automation to help the management or to help the people using the space.
We are far away from actually removing all humans from manufacturing environments. We will still need a lot of them, but what is also happening now is collaborative robotics, where people work with robots, for example, and so that means humans have to kind of now also understand how to collaboratively work with machines.
This is a truly political question. So using concepts that we developed, could you make it happen? Could you replace humans in the workplace? Yes, you could, but this is not new. We've been automating things since we've been developing machines, like weaving machines, for instance. Can you imagine how many humans are replaced by a weaving machine?
We can free all this manpower to allow humans to do something that is more human.
Workers are, they move on from things that are, at a particular level to something that's at a higher level, maybe more interesting, more rewarding, more well paid.
If we were to automate everything, or close to everything, then we need some kind of redistribution of the resources. But if you were to automate without redistribution, then no, obviously it wouldn't work. I don't think it would work, because then people would be left with nothing, and some people would have literally everything.